In this tutorial you are going to learn how to use 3 functions that are typically used in Excel. Now let's start with the SUMIF function. So let's compare that with the SUM function. The SUM function allows us to calculate the sum of a range of values. Let's say if we want to find basically the sum of all of these vehicles, we can just use the SUM formula. But let's say if we want to use the SUMIF formula, how will that help us? Let's highlight in this particular cell, so I'm gonna give it a yellow color. So let's say if we want to find the sum of only the Mazda vehicles. So we don't want to find the sum of all these numbers, but just basically a selected sum. We want to find the sum of a certain element in this list. So what we need to do is type in equal SUMIF parentheses, and then we need to select a range. So the range will be the car type, and then comma, the criteria will be based on whatever is in this cell. So H17, and then comma, the sum range. So these are the numbers that we wish to add. Close parentheses, enter. This should be the car type actually instead of Mazda. Now we're gonna put the word Mazda in this cell. And so notice that we get the total sum of all the Mazda vehicles. So that's 125 plus 142 plus 425. And you could check it if you type in equal sum 125, 142, 425. It will give you 692. Now you could change it. Let's say if we want to find the sum of the Honda vehicles, it's automatically going to adjust. There's only one type of Honda vehicle in this list, so it's 174. If we want to find the sum of all that, so your other vehicles, just type it in, and it automatically gives us the sum. So we have 326 for Toyota, 89, and 274. So if we type in equal 326 plus 89 plus the other, which is 274, we get 689. So the SUMIF function helps us to find the sum of a certain element in this list, rather than the sum of all of these numbers in the list. Now let's move on to our next function, which is going to be the count function. So how can we use the count function? The count function allows us to count. If you read it, it says it counts the number of cells in a range that contains numbers, so we can use it to count this column. And so we have a total of 10 cells that contains numbers. So this is the first one, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 cells that contain numbers. Now if you try to use it with a column of data that don't contain numbers, you're going to get a value of 0. So that's the for function, a count function. It helps you to count the number of cells with numbers. The next one is the counter function or Counta function. And so this function allows you to basically count the number of cells that are not empty. So these could be cells with a text or a number. So if we highlight these cells, we're gonna get a count of 10. Now let's say if we have Mazda. If we have a number 25. Let's say we have Toyota, and then 37, and then let's say Jim. Let's say Carla 12. If we try to use the count function on this, it's only going to count 2 numbers, because it counts 25 and 37. It doesn't content this one, which contains the letters and numbers, so that's the count function. If we use the count cell function or the Counta function, it'll count every function that is not empty. And so it counts all of these functions. If we try to use it on this entire range, it still gives us 6. It doesn't count the empty cells. Now there is a function that does count the empty cells, and that is the count blank function. So notice that we have 3 empty cells, 1, 2, 3, and so that's the count blank function. So now you know how to use the count and the Counta function in Excel.